All right, everyone. I would just like to thank everybody who's tuning in for another Cerulean Scriptures, where today I'm going to be talking about my thoughts on gaming, how I've been doing so for 25 years, as well as some of the current stuff. Hopefully nothing too controversial. Anyway, thank you very much for hanging out. Greatly appreciate a like, comment, and a subscribe in YouTube. You can also find me on Twitter. I also stream on Twitch every once in a while, so I would greatly appreciate your support in any of those endeavors. Let's get right into it. All right. Oh, I'm about to say, we are doing it in Slay the Spire today, which I don't think we normally do. Probably use Slay the Spire like once for a video, if that. So I apologize if the audio is overbearing. Certainly trying to keep it reasonable, and I'm definitely not prepared right off the bat. A little bit up, but anyway, part of the reason why we're using Slay the Spire and the way that it relates to the topic of gaming is that I don't know if any of you have seen, but Slay the Spire 2 is coming out here not too long from now, and I've beaten Ascension 20 on everybody but the Watcher, so that is going to be our choice of background for today. And so, number one, once again, I greatly appreciate everybody who's here today to talk about this and listen to me. I guess it makes the most sense that one of the first things for us to talk about is going to be some of the most recent gaming news, namely the Switch 2. I know there's been some other games that have popped up. Some of them have been kind of controversial with how they've gone down, and I'm afraid that's just not something I pay too terribly close attention to. I probably should, but I just don't enjoy listening to it like that. So, most of this particular section is going to be talking about the Switch 2. So, I already know that Switch 2's pre-order date has been delayed to, I think, May 8th. So, you know, that's always fun and dandy. But we live with that. A big thing that people have talked about with the Switch 2 has been price. And I say it's about the Switch 2, but really, I think gaming in general has received a lot of debate around like the price of how much games should be, what is fair, what isn't fair. And I perfectly understand that. I'm not going to say, I shouldn't say I perfectly understand that. It's not like I've done research into it. But I have, like I said, been gaming for about 25 years. I've been spending money on games for probably 20 years. I'm trying to think of when the first time I actually purchased a game was, where I used my allowance to get a game. Well, I can't remember the exact date. The first one I remember saving money for was a used copy of Metroid Prime. I don't remember exactly when that came out, but I was young. I don't think I was even a teenager, which, you know, game is rated T, so oh well. But I remember that being something like $20 or $40 for a used copy, right? And at the time, the concept of money didn't mean much to me, but whatever. So, the topic of how much people should be paying for video games is kind of a rough one, because no one wants to pay, really, no, I don't think anyone wants to pay $60 for a game in the first place. I don't think that's even a controversial take. They definitely don't want to pay $70 or $80 or $90 or any of that. But I also feel like I've been buying games for several years now. And I feel like I remember games being $60 for a very long time. And with that, and the price of games kind of staying about the same for as long as it has, there's this interesting kind of ordeal, I guess, where these games have stayed at about the same price, but they're supposed to keep getting better and better. And while I'm certainly no economist, and am not particularly good at determining the actual value of something, typically speaking, I think things are supposed to go up over time. That's just how inflation naturally works. So, for a entertainment commodity to be as cheap as it has been, for as long as games have, is probably a little bit of what this shock is that we're seeing. I, for one, obviously don't want to pay $80 or $90 for a game that sucks, right? That is the first and foremost thing that I should mention. I do not want to pay a bunch of money for games. But I'm wondering if part of the reason why people are so shocked by it is because we are, instead of seeing the prices of games go up kind of like in small increments, like instead of $60, it's $62, $64, $70, something like that. Gradual, that's the word. Instead of it going up gradually over the past, like, 10 years, it has spiked to, like, $80. It's spiked to, like, $80 and has in-game purchases like battle passes and all that. Which, that's its own entirely separate ordeal that I probably will not comment on too much here, because that is... There's just not very much value in that discussion, I don't think. But getting back to it, the price debacle on the new Switch games, I'll be real, is not surprising. It's not welcome, but it's not surprising. It makes some sense that that was going to happen. It was kind of a matter of time, really. At least that's how I feel about it. I don't think there was really a whole lot of a way around it. So... Apologies, I had to make sure I didn't take a bunch of damage. So, I mean, this is about what I expected. It's actually a little bit more than what I expected. I was hoping it was going to be, like, $70 downloads and maybe, like, $75 for physical media. Now, it sounds like as far as the physical media and the cartridge ordeal and, like, how it works, I'm not even going to act like I have any idea how it works. Something about, like, the physical cartridge is effectively just the license, and you still have to download the game or something. Like I said, I'm not going to get into it. I'm not even going to... That is something that I saw and did not look into any further because I did not care, is the best way to put it. So that one you'll have to look into yourselves, I'm afraid. But otherwise... yeah, the prices are very unfortunate. But we're probably a long time coming, I'll be real. As far as the hardware capabilities of the Switch 2, I'm not big on hardware knowledge. I don't know what it's going to look like, how strong it's going to be. I'll be real, I was playing games on a Switch Lite, and for the most part, it was fine. Honestly, I think a lot of the struggles that it had might have been because it was a Switch Lite, and I didn't take great care of it. So, that much is TBD. But part of the reason why I want to get into this, and why the topic of their price is so big of a deal for me, is a little bit of a monkey's paw situation. A bit of a bittersweet foot in mouth scenario. So they have released that for $50 a month, I think is, what was it? It was like a $50 subscription. I can't remember if it's like $50 a year or what. I hope it's not $50 a month. That'd be lame. But for some subscription, you can play GameCube games, remastered or whatever, on Switch 2. And this is the important part. They said that they will have online multiplayer of some kind. They'll have a local co-op and online co-op, or online multiplayer. Local multiplayer, online multiplayer, whatever. And among those games is going to be things like F-Zero, which I have told people I would spend inordinate amounts of money to play. So that's where the foot and mouth part comes from. It's here, and it's got online multiplayer, and it sounds like it's going to cost it's not even a pretty penny. It is an ugly penny. It is a dirty, rancid, moldy penny. It's a lot. So we'll have to see how that goes, but that's the worst part, is I probably will end up getting all that stuff because I really do want to play games like F-Zero online, because F-Zero is amazing. I really hope they put games like Gotcha Force in there, because it's amazing. I know there's some people who are excited about like Pokemon Coliseum and Pokemon Gale of Darkness, right? That's cool, right? I'm here for all that. So I am hopeful that it works, and I'm hopeful that the games run smoothly, because I am still willing to spend a bunch of that money on that stuff. So I know that there's been a lot of negativity surrounding the Switch 2 and some of its problems, but I am indeed kind of here for it. I'll be real. Apologies. Yeah, I'm kind of excited to see it, and I want it to succeed. So even though it's a terrible monetary investment, and I'm definitely kind of paying the price for it, it's probably going to happen for me. But anyway, as far as the Switch, I think that's most of what I would be willing to talk about right now. Like I said, I didn't really do a whole lot of like research or anything into it, and I don't really want to. I think a lot of people hate the Switch, and you know, they're allowed to hate the Switch, or Switch 2, sorry. They're allowed to hate the Switch 2. I'm not going to blame anybody for hating the Switch 2. But I can tell you that I think the price is effectively a long time coming. I think we are seeing the long-term ramifications of not having to pay a bunch of extra money for consoles and physical games, all happening at once, which sucks, right? Like I said, it's not that I want to spend a bunch of money, it's that I think it was going to happen. And I think it is just an unfortunate side effect of just the way that things have been. So yeah, short and sweet. I'll probably be getting the Switch 2 because I'm willing to pay exorbitant amounts of money to play F-Zero and hopefully other games like Gotcha Force online with people, because they are some of the greatest games I've ever played, and the fact that they've never been remastered is a shame, and I want to live that whole life. And I'm here for it. But, yeah. So, yep, I will gladly eat my entire foot. I will suck upon my own toesies for saying I'm willing to spend insane quantities of dollary dues and paying the price for it. That was so stupid. I should have played that flurry of blows. That's dumb. But anyway. So I guess we'll move on from the Switch 2, because that's... We really don't even know a whole lot. We know enough about it to have opinions about it, but we don't know enough to, like, talk at length about it, right? What am I gonna say? It's too expensive. The hardware sucks or something? I don't know. But, let's talk a little bit about, I guess, probably a little bit about kind of what some of that AAA type stuff is and kind of what's been happening, or at least my perception on it. I think there has been an interesting shift, and it's happened before, I believe, where we get sort of these, like, mountains and valleys, I guess you'd call them, right, of interest in these, like, big name titles. They're always going to have fans, right? They're always going to be popular. But sometimes they're less popular than others. And I find myself wondering if that's kind of what we're going to start seeing, or if we're already in the middle of it, where these big name games, right? I'm sure you've been seeing a bunch of them that are, like, getting a bunch of this bad rep, whether it's deserved or not. And the discourse around them seems to collectively be that one way or another, they're just not good, right? Regardless of any opinion on why the game is or is not good, what matters is that it is not good. And that, I think, is something that's just going to pass. Apologies, I'm thinking. So that, I think, is something that's going to pass. Whether it be because people change their opinions about whether or not games are of good quality, or if they decide to make games themselves, and kind of go out with the old, in with the new kind of deal. This is gonna hurt. But, Basically, a bunch of these games that have failed for whatever, or failed, which actually I guess is really its own point of discussion. These games that seem to be struggling in one way or another. It's very hard to know, as someone who doesn't do a lot of research, whether or not they're actually failing, and whether or not anything's going to change. So that one I'll probably just have to leave largely as it is. I can tell you that it is very hard for someone such as myself to determine whether or not something is actually succeeding or not. Because of how things are so expensive, and it's hard to know where all that money is going. It has to be going somewhere. So a bunch of money is getting spent on these games, and then they receive just like terrible press, terrible reviews. It seems like they run poorly. There's messages that people don't like in them, and it can be very disheartening, for sure. It makes it very hard to look forward to gaming, which is something that I'm pretty sure I'm not alone in saying. I think people are really hopeful to find games that they're able to play. So whenever you hear about how they're all terrible, it can be hard to look forward to things. And I feel like having a hard time looking forward to things is a big contributor to why people are sad. It's obviously not the only thing, but I'm certain it is related. So with that in mind, I can tell you that I haven't played anything that I guess classifies as a AAA title. I guess I don't. Here's another part where I'm exposing myself. I've been playing games for who knows how long properly, right? I say 29 years. It's probably close. And I don't adequately know what constitutes a AAA game. I don't know if it's the budget or just the type of game or what. But, I effectively relate that to your big name kind of yearly releases, or just these other kind of, like, I guess you'd call them epic games, right? Just like long stories with choices matter kind of stuff going on, that are usually part of a franchise. And it has actually been quite a while since I've played one of those myself that I can think of. Alright, especially, you know, like Call of Duty. It's probably been... I wouldn't be surprised if it's been 5 or 10 years since I've played, like, an actual Call of Duty. By which I mean, you know, like, jumping into a multiplayer lobby, and engaging with people on it. I've, of course, booted up, like, Black Ops to play, like, zombies while I'm by myself, but I wouldn't really call it... That's its own... That's kind of its own entity, right? That is a different operation. So... that is why it's very hard for me to know where exactly these games are failing, and really if there's going to be anything that they get fixed. Or how it's going to get fixed. Though I imagine it's something that we will see in time. We're getting some bad rolls, not gonna lie. Oh, messed that up. I don't think it's going to make too much of a difference, but ouch. We'll be fine. Long story short, I think it'll pass. I think we will be... I think the big games will come around at some point. It might just take it a second. Ouch. But anyway. So... Otherwise, as far as those big name games go, with it having been as long as it has, since I've really engaged with them deeply, I can tell you, for one thing, I don't particularly want to anytime soon, if I'm going to be perfectly honest. It definitely seems like right now they're a dumpster fire. But it wouldn't be too bad of a thing for them to come back around and start being a little bit more like they were long ago. Now, that's probably about all I have on that particular discussion topic, but something that I think a lot of people are probably more interested in thinking about is going to be indie games and kind of how they've been doing and the growth that they have seen that has kind of exploded lately. So, don't need that. So, I can tell you that I've been playing indie games for, at this point, I think about 8 years. The first indie game that I can remember purchasing that wasn't like one of those ones on like the Xbox Arcade, there were those like, you know, mini titles that use your Xbox avatar and all that, was what do you want to call it? Axiom Verge. Which, you know, actually, you may not know. Axiom Verge is a Metroidvania from 100,000 years ago that was designed to be very loyal to the original Metroid and took a lot of inspiration from it, which is pretty cool. It's a very fun game. And that definitely did a lot for impacting kind of how I've looked at games going forward. For one thing, it did a lot to give me an idea of how much a person really should be paying for a game. Personally speaking, you know, maybe this isn't the same for everybody, but I believe that you should get approximately 8 hours of enjoyment per $20 that you spend. Has really been kind of my, like, I guess you could call it vanilla test. When I think about whether or not a game was worth it, I generally think about it in that aspect. And if it doesn't meet that criteria, then I would probably be willing to say that it was not worth it. Which is why, unfortunately, I don't do a whole lot of the little, like, I guess you'd call them artsy games. The, like, you know, kind of the, someone's first attempt at making a game, right? And that shouldn't discourage people, right, at all. Because, I mean, 8 hours is a very long time to go. It's not like Axiom Verge had 8 hours of real gameplay, right? I beat the game multiple times in 24 hours. But I still think that's kind of what it would be nice to think about. It might kill me, but we're gonna do it anyway because I'm like almost dead. So anyway, yes. Axiom Verge was very instrumental in my, I guess you could call it, upbringing as far as it came to, I get not only what do you want to call it, indie games, but really PC games in general. I think that is the first game that I actually purchased on a computer. It was very instrumental in kind of defining how I went about purchasing games in the future. So, as time went along, and I bought more and more games, and I tried to compare them to Axiom Verge, you know, is it better, is it worse? I've definitely seen kind of the gambit of indie games, not only in terms of not only in terms of their financial value, but also in like kind of the enjoyment you get out of them. Because there is a lot of effort that goes into apologies, I like started a train of thought and then lost it. So we're going to pull off of that one. There is a lot of things to consider when it comes to trying to buy a game, especially with things being as expensive as they are. And I feel like it's become a little bit harder to buy indie games at this point, just because something we can talk a little bit about is like what do you want to call it? I guess this this trend, and it's not really a bad trend by any means, but these games that are functioning very similar to Lethal Company. Right? I don't necessarily know if they've gotten a genre yet, right? They're just these like co-op horror games. Ooh, nice. Yeah, just these co-op horror games that people have been playing a bunch of. And, you know, there's some good ones, right? There is Lethal Company itself. Repo seems to be the big one lately. And then, of course, there's also some that I think just kind of fall flat. They kind of try to do something similar to these other games, almost like they're capitalizing on the trend, and then they just don't quite make it. And it's weird because you're trying to save money and avoid wasting it, which I think is especially difficult when you consider there's probably a bunch of people who have piles upon piles of games in their like Steam libraries and all that that those games are just not getting played. Which makes it even harder to buy new games and to support indie games and all that. Because why would you buy yet another new game that you're going to play for like 2 weeks and then never touch again when you have like things like Baldur's Gate 3, or maybe you've got something older, like maybe you want to play through Fallout or something like that, right? You've got these other games that you're trying to fit into your busy schedule as well, which makes it very disadvantageous to try and do that. And it makes it seem very wasteful. We're getting beat up over here. So that is one example of why I'm like playing these games that I've had for so long on like streams and all that, is that they're games that they might be pretty old, but I think they're fairly solid, right? They offer a lot of that value that I talked about. Woof. Meditate looks good. This might almost have to be... That's pretty good with holy water. But yeah, it's just really hard to commit to new games. You kind of have to get the most value you can out of everything you play. So... oh, crap. Oh. Apologies, this is basically an elite fight. Ugh. So it's interesting to see a bunch of like streamers and everybody playing like repo and all that, because I feel like that does help to improve the game's survivability. Those games, I can tell you, do have a decent amount of replay value just by being like silly and goofy, and a little bit scary. There's a lot you can do with them that make them enjoyable. Oh lord, this is bad. Oh. That sucks. Honestly, it probably could have been. You know what? I'm sitting here trying to do too much. Hang on. I know. Save and quit. Lame. Bad. I just want to see if I can just outright kill it. Of course I can. I'm Watcher. Who would have guessed? Anyway. And it makes me very interested to see kind of what the next indie game that blows up is going to be. Lately we've seen, at least I've seen, a bunch of Liar's Bar, which, you know, is kind of a just goofy card game. There's Repo, been really popular. People are really into gachas. People are really into Marvel Rivals. That's a fun one. So getting to see kind of what comes next and what sticks around is something I kind of keep a little bit of an eye on. And I am intrigued by what's going to pop off next. On that note, though, it's a little bit weird because even though I want to see what's going to pop off next, I really can't guarantee that I'll even be, like, involved in it. Other than, like, tangentially, right? I'll see that it's happening, and that'll be my entire involvement. Just like, oh, wow, that's so neat. I can't wait to watch people play this game. That's going to be so much fun. Wow. Which kind of sucks, but money is money. You know how it goes. Hopefully it's something cheap that I can get involved in, even if it's tangentially involved. Value. Oh dear. I did that wrong. At least I'm doing a surprisingly good job of surviving. But anyway, I guess now that I've talked a little bit about kind of the stuff that's upcoming, which is probably my weakest point, because I'm not good at research. I do not like it. Chances are, if I make a guess on stuff, it's probably maybe not wrong, but might be misguided. And that is not to dissuade myself or speak bad about myself. It is simply a matter of, it is how the things be. I know that I just am more used to some of my older games. And just in general tend to prefer those older games. And I can greatly appreciate that it seems like several people are kind of on the same thought process, right? It seems like a lot of people greatly appreciate older games. I don't think we would get really have any big cards that like warrant playing Blasphemy. I mean, it probably kills the bosses at the end. Don't really have any good upgrades either, so we can take that. Sorry. So anyway, I suppose a little bit of my history is that the first console I actually had is a PlayStation 1, right? I think I actually technically had a Nintendo Entertainment System, right? The original NES. But that, I think my parents purchased it when it came out, but I didn't really do a whole lot with it until much later, right? It is one that we found after a while. The main system that I had for most of my formative years was a PlayStation 1. And number one, Spyro is the GOAT. And I will not be convinced otherwise. Spyro is so good. So it just dies, you mean? Probably did that out of order. I was probably supposed to consecrate and do the other stuff. Let's this out. Okay. Cool. More fear. So between Spyro Goofy's Funhouse, and think of anything else that was like a big deal for me on the PS1. Spyro was definitely the main one by like leaps and bounds. I guess Mega Man. There was plenty of Mega Man during that time, and that was definitely some of the most fun gaming I've done. And it's kind of unfortunate that I went back and played it a little bit not too terribly long ago. I had it on stream for a little bit, and it was so easy, which, you know, is fine. It's to be expected. But even so, I think that it gave me as much trouble as it did as a child. Is certainly astonishing. I made it through like half the game in less than 2 hours without any kind of like speed running nonsense, right? I was not trying to go fast. And I was still just like blowing the game up. Well, Betty didn't think that through. Oops. Well, that sucks. Oh, sevens in chat. I'm bad at games. Sorry. 25 years academy training wasted. But that's okay. It's okay. It's the Watcher. We'll do it again. So sorry. But spent a very long time playing Spyro. Got my fill of kind of the platformer genre that way. And after that, I think, is when I moved into the GameCube. Which is probably why the switch to having GameCube support is such a big deal for me. Is because by this point, I was like probably like between 8 and 12. No, it's probably a little bit later than that. Ooh, nice. Apologies, we had to get a free Super Elite. Tragic. Anyways, my apologies. GameCube is definitely where I kind of got to experience a much wider gambit of games. Wow, okay. Metroid Prime, of course, was on here. Super Mario Sunshine. Skies of Arcadia Legends was a good one. Some Sonic Adventure 2. Obviously, we had Melee, right? Every kid had Melee. Everybody loves Melee for some reason. Which, you know, is whatever. But it's definitely kind of where a lot of my interest in gaming kind of blew up. And grew outward. We got to see all of, you know, Legend of Zelda. We got to do... I think I actually even had, speaking of Legend of Zelda, I think I had the Legend of Zelda, like, disc, right? The collection disc. And it's unfortunate because I think I still have that disc, but it's so scratched up it doesn't work, which is tragic. And it's unfortunate to hear that it is now worth so much money. This game, the GameCube is also where we got Gotcha Force, right? In Indie Gem, not actually Indie, it's Capcom, surprisingly. Which is also just another one of my, like, just favorite, like, random gem games that no one knows about. So, the GameCube is definitely important to my, I guess you could say existence, right? GameCube took up a lot of my time, and I would gladly let it take up all that time again. So, getting to see that it is coming to the Switch 2 is quite nice. Oh, I just had to make sure I don't die. Alright. GG. Anyway. Back to rambling about the GameCube. I think at this point is also about when we started to see the Game Boy Advance, right? So, by this point, I am now successfully in a situation where I am gaming at home on the GameCube, and I'm gaming on the go with my Game Boy, right? By this point in my life, I'm now surrounded by games, and it is definitely something that just kind of takes over my entire thought process, just because really there's nothing else at the time that's interesting. Could be TISM, could be not, who knows. But regardless of if it is or not, it's definitely hard for me to say that I didn't enjoy it. I've had a great time since then, and at that time, just gaming out the wazoo. Centuries. Ooh. And this is probably also a lot of what set me up for kind of the retro games, or like playing older games. because by this time I also had the that little add-on for the GameCube that you put on the bottom of it and lets you play like Game Boy Advance games. It also lets you play Game Boy Color games on the big screen, right? Which to me was amazing. So at this point in my gaming life, I was also playing games that were older than kind of what was intended for me at the time, I guess is what you'd call it. I think I did that out of order. No, I didn't do that out of order. Well, this is going to hurt. Ouch. Okay. Ooh. Yes, please. Oh, Lord. Lord, I am so mixed up. I am so smart. Well, I'm going to eat that one because I should have caught that. I should have been smarter than that, and I wasn't. I'm going to pay the price for my hubris, because that's what we do around here. But anyway. So, at this point, I am playing games that are kind of not meant for my age group. And we also come to another interesting, I guess, decision point, you could call it. It was, I believe, a birthday gift where I got to choose between, I believe, getting a DS game or Dragon Age 2, I think. And I'm sure that for many people, Dragon Age 2 would probably be the pick. But not for me. I heard what do you want to call it? I heard DS game. I heard on the go, right? And for me, that was a big deal, right? That was big value. Because as much fun as I'm sure Dragon Age would have been, Dragon Age was not mobile. Which, as it turns out, was pretty important to me. Being able to play games on the go was a big deal. So, that was kind of another ceiling decision point that I guess gives you some insight into kind of how I operate, is that I went with a DS game that at this time I can't actually remember over what do you want to call it, Dragon Age, because at the time I just didn't know. And whether or not that was a good idea? Alright, do I die? Yes. Cool. Man, I'm so bad at games, especially when I'm trying to talk at the same time. Of course, I'm also just bad at this game in particular. But anyway, I'm trying too hard to, like, force conversation. So, yeah, that was a big deciding factor. I believe by this point, actually got why this was all. Because prior to this, I'd gotten a Nintendo DS, and I'd gotten a white Xbox 360 from a former babysitter. By the way, I was always playing games at the babysitter's house too, right? Like when I say I was surrounded by games, I was surrounded by games. They were his all the time. And that white Xbox would serve to kind of be the next kind of stepping stone, I guess. I would end up getting a replacement one. Because, wouldn't you believe it, the white one suffered the red ring of death. Right? The infamous ring. Wow. The almighty red ring of death took that Xbox, and I ended up having to get a replacement. A nice, juicy new Xbox 360. And that would be the beginning of my online foray into games, right? One of the first games that I ended up getting live for, because I was just so desperate for it, was Halo Reach, right? Which is, in my opinion, another one of the best games ever made. It took so long to convince my parents to get any kind of that online service for it. Partially because our internet connection was so rough. Now, alongside this stuff, another game I was playing, especially through a lower elementary school, was RuneScape. I'm not going to go too deep into RuneScape because it's RuneScape. You click on stuff and you let it do its thing. Just know that in terms of was I a MMO kid of any kind, yes, it was RuneScape. I did not play World of Warcraft except for on one of those little like Christmas trial runs or whatever. But anyway. The 360 would end up being some of the most important social growth that I would experience. Because by this point, I've also become a social outcast in school by my own design, pretty much, right? If you don't know if you've been able to tell, but I am not the most sociable individual, right? If it sounds like I'm having trouble speaking, it's because typically I don't speak. I was very quiet for a lot of time, and really, 360 was a very important part of me kind of coming out of that. Or I guess part of the journey of getting out of that. Because it is where I would meet some very long-time friends, and it's unfortunate that we don't really talk anymore, but that is its own unfortunate ordeal. That was an unfortunate side effect of a couple different things happening. But anyway, the 360 would, of course, kind of tide me over until the Xbox One. I would play a lot of Reach, a lot of Oblivion until Skyrim came out, and Gears of War 3. That would end up being a lot of my my time taken up. There would also be Fallout, naturally. Naturally, we were playing Fallout 3. And that would kind of be what I would ride until the Xbox One. By this point, the mobile games are kind of a distraction more than anything. By this point, I had already played through things like Pokemon Diamond. I'd played Black and White. All those, right? Or whichever ones. So by this point, the mobile games were starting to fall away a little bit and give way more so to Xbox gaming. Right? Xbox. Smash! That kind of stuff. It was also where our internet at home became so poor because there were just no better options that playing online was almost impossible. It was so hard to play games with friends because our internet connection would not allow us to play together. Which was a little it's a little heartbreaking in retrospect. Lol. Die. I'll take a judgment. Okay. So now, I think by this point also is when I actually started getting into Magic. And conveniently enough, I got into Magic because of the Duels of the Planeswalkers games on the Xbox Arcade. I can't remember why in particular I decided to pick them up, but they ended up being the reason for me getting into Magic. Happens to also be how I ended up kind of committing my first microtransactions, because there was some of them that some of the DLC. Actually, I guess those aren't my first microtransactions, are they? Right? Because I guess you'd call it DLC. Yeah, no, I guess it wouldn't be. Whatever. Judged. It was DLC, right? I'm not going to go and call them microtransactions, even though I guess technically they probably were technically microtransactions. If you want to be technical. That was lucky. So you talk about mobile games kind of falling to the wayside. So at this point, I'm about to graduate from high school, and go to college. That's kind of where a lot of that time that I would spend on like Xbox and all that started to disappear because instead of staying home to play Xbox with the friends that I've known for at this point several years, I was driving off to... I was also able to suddenly drive and was instead going to play card games at like a card shop or go to college and being there for like hours upon hours upon hours. And fortunately I brought magic cards to kind of keep me entertained, and that means that I didn't have to go back home instantly to get my gaming fix, right? I could just stay there and play card games. It is where I've met some very long-time friends that fortunately I'm friends with to this day, and I greatly appreciate their existence. This is also where I started to play more board games because there was an entire gaming club, right? The Gamer Society that I had the great fortune to be president of for a little bit, but we'll get into that shortly. Well, I think about what we're trying to do, and I think we're trying to go infinite if we can. So we probably don't want to add Simmering Fury. We've already got a Flurry of Blows. We don't need a second one. Judged. So, going to college ended up putting quite the damper on my online friendships. Which, you know, is unfortunate, but I guess it's bound to happen. Few things last forever. Judged. Those. Probably taking not 7 damage that I didn't need to take, but whatever. Judged. Like cut through fate. But fortunately at this point, I've made friends at college and just played games with them for hours upon hours upon hours. Fortunately, as part of going to college, my parents were getting me a little... It's like a notebook, right? Whatever you want to call it. Kind of like a little micro... It was a little... It had Windows 8 on it, that much I remember, and it was a little Microsoft, like... It was like a tablet that had a keyboard attached to it. And that is actually what I ended up purchasing Axiom Verge on, and would kind of serve as a sort of impromptu gaming laptop for a while. It was very important for me to have had that, Because by this point, I'm also being exposed to people who have been PC gamers for much longer than me, which means I get to hear about all of the interesting indie games that I did not have access to as someone with an Xbox. And honestly, I was starting to get jealous. I wanted to be, part of that world and all that fun stuff. So, but of course, by this time, other fun stuff had happened where I did own a laptop, but it wasn't particularly good for gaming. But I tried to install an emulator and ROMs on it. That was not something which should have been done for someone who was of low computer literacy. And believe me, I was not computer literate. I got to witness everything on my laptop turning into sludge, might be the best way to describe it. There were some saved tabs that I could go to, and that was it. My icons didn't exist. They didn't open anything. Nothing worked. The laptop was more or less bricked. I got to hear very sternly that if anything like that happened again, I would not have a laptop. That is probably a big part of what would guide my decisions to not really even install games until I got to college and was trying to do stuff on my own. Easy peasy. Tragic. I do like getting 3 Watcher cards. Those are Watcher cards. Okay. Well, how it goes. At least they exhaust themselves. Well, no, I guess they replace themselves. That sucks. Yeah, no, after bricking a laptop and making it so that it had to be effectively factory reset, but I couldn't even factory reset it. It required a strange USB drive that played a some kind of a cleanup file that I have never seen since then, and I don't think I ever want to have to see it. That was a very big part, probably, of why I was very scared to download games or do like any sort of mods or anything like that, or anything even remotely related to things that weren't consoles, right? When they added mods to Skyrim and Fallout 4 on Xbox, that was unreal. That was like unheard of. So I just didn't even really know what to do with that. Ouch. Judged. Even Steam, I was very timid when it came to installing stuff. Even as like an 18-year-old or 19-year-old, right? Or whenever I actually did that. I However, once I did manage to make that first installation of Axiom Verge, that was a big deal. And once I did that, it sort of opened up the door to wanting to play more games, because this little notepad thing was functional for Steam, but it was not a gaming laptop. So that is when I went to purchase an actual gaming laptop. And let me tell you, that was a whole dramatic dumpster fire, which I'm not going to go into too deeply. Just know that it caused some problems. Not even the laptop itself, kind of the situations surrounding the laptop, which is unfortunate. So by that point, I have acquired a laptop, or a gaming laptop specifically. I've now started spending some of my money on games for said laptop, and finally my sort of gaming repertoire had become fully opened. By that point, I was fully involved in, like, buying games, on some occasions modding them. Nothing that didn't have, like, workshop, right? I would not touch anything that I had to download from a third party still. But if it had a workshop in Steam and I had bought it, I was probably messing with it. I did a little bit of Starbound, right? I had a little bit of Terraria, a little bit of obviously, you know, there was plenty of Skyrim to be had. Nuclear Throne was another fun one. I was just kind of experimenting with a bunch of stuff. Like almost no block. Might have to be inner piece, because it does say draw cards. Okay, that moves us towards infinite. Just kind of have to get rid of the rest of this stuff. What rare cards would we want? There's not really anything. Anyway, my apologies. Getting lost in the sauce. So by this point, I'm pretty much entirely into gaming on my laptop and using and playing Magic, right? I'm spending hours upon hours upon hours at college, as could be reasonably expected, I think. Right? I was about to take a bunch of damage. Hate that for me. Ouch, ouch. Cool. Awesome, I'm fine being dead. I'm fine being dead, this run sucked. Spending like several nights in college till like 4 a.m. Right? 100,000 years there. Till I got close to graduation. Fortunately, some more fun dark clouds kind of hung over there that made it so that I was not very active in my gaming pursuit. Kind of got lost in the dark sauce. Fortunately, not play a whole lot of games for a while. Very little. Not really enjoying my time with them. So I took a little vacation down to Florida where it was just me. A little like the little the SNES Lite, I guess you'd call it, right? The little Super Nintendo like gift thing that has a whole bunch of preloaded games on it. Took that down there with my laptop and plenty of alcohol, and went on what could effectively be called a bender, and kind of got to enjoy myself and my gaming a lot more. Kind of got to re-experience kind of playing games enjoying it. Which was very important in setting me up for now. Nice. So after coming back from that, kind of gets us into, I guess, the state from before now, right? Is kind of a, if you want to call it like right now modern, then this is, I guess, effectively the pre-modern. It was where I oh man, I'm getting birded. Wow. Got messed up. Die. Jeez. My gaming habits and tendencies kind of stayed neutral for a lot of the time following that. I was a lot better about my boundaries and knowing how much I need, how much I could get away with playing versus how much I couldn't. And that stayed pretty straightforward up until now. Now at this point, with my boundaries a little bit more set. Better cash flow lets me kind of buy and play whatever game I want. I just kind of go with the flow. And now I've had some other issues, totally unrelated, definitely, that have made it that have put me in a position to try some streaming and a little bit of posting on a tweeter. Totally unrelated. May or may not have things to do with the other half of the poll that put us into this video. Ouch. And yeah, that's kind of how we got to here. Why did I do that? So, obviously, no, I'm not particularly great at talking, so there's probably plenty of information that I've failed to include here. Such as how I had a, or I didn't own a Super. I guess technically I owned a Super Nintendo, but I never got it to work. But I would play the SNES at that babysitter's. That's kind of also where I got introduced to like fighting games and all that. Right? There's a bunch of interesting details that I say interesting. They obviously weren't that interesting because I didn't include them, but maybe it's because I didn't remember them. There's a bunch of details to all that that I left out for one reason or another, including but not limited to forgetting. But yes, I have played quite the handful of games over the past 25-ish years, and honestly would not trade it for anything. If I had to go back and do it again, I absolutely. Probably would again and again and again. Which is pretty nice. If I'm gonna... So anyway, I'll probably finish up this run, and then that will probably do it on this topic. Because obviously I don't want to, I guess, overspeak. Right? Not much point in beating a dead horse, and sometimes that dead horse just does not have that much left to say. So instead, a lot of this is going to be me just simply, I guess, yapping. Wherever I can. Wherever it feels appropriate to do so, as I try and make my way through the rest of this particular run-through of Slay the Spire. Probably going to go ahead and do this so we can just not, like, auto-die. Always good, always good. Don't think I need any of those. Bingo. Always got to try and find the line. And let me tell you, sometimes that line is lost in the dirt. Do not know why it's so hard for me to play this game, other than because I'm bad. That's okay. I've been bad at games for 25 years. Kind of, though. No. Oh. It's gonna hurt. Oh, yeah. We're getting there. Should probably drink that. A little itchy. That's how it goes, I suppose. Ouch. Alright, well, I hate that. Ouch. Die, potato. Oh my, that's a bunch of cardboard. Scrawl's usually pretty good, so is Vault. It's probably just Vault. I don't have enough ways to, like, burn through all these cards. Even better. Let's see. Take Runic Pyramid. Why not? I suppose that's an interesting topic, is whether or not I'm good at games and why I'm not good at games. So, in spite of having played games for 25-ish years, you'd think that I'd be reasonably good at them. Not particularly. I feel like I plateau really hard in gaming. I get pretty decently good up to a point, and then I just kind of falter. Don't really know why. It could be because I don't do a whole lot of, like, research after playing games, but I also seem to do reasonably good to start. what is it? I describe it as being a high tier casual. That sounds about right. I'm a pretty decently good player at games compared to other people who aren't playing them very much. But for the people who aren't, compared to people who do play games a lot, I just don't even, like, hold a candle. I'm, like, not even close. And I've never really been able to properly figure out why. It's like I've always been, like, right on the cusp of being decently good at games, whether it be card games or board games or video games or whatever, right? I'm always, like, decent, but never really exceptional. Don't mind me, I guess I'm just gonna kind of eat it. Oh yeah, look at all that. Okay, well, time to die. I think that might be part of it, is I'm always very hasty to do stuff that ends up, killing me. Right? I always end up leaking value. Like there, I think I actually would have survived. I don't know. Maybe if anybody else knows anything about why people sometimes just kind of like start out at games really good and then end up kind of blowing. Maybe somebody else has some insight into that. But, you know, either way, it's been real. It's been fun. It's been real fun. Hopefully, my ramblings are appealing enough to keep on in the background while you do your daily chores and whatever. And once again, be sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let me know if everything sounded enjoyable and fun, and if you'd like to see more stuff like this. Once again, you can find me on X at BeberOfficial. I'm occasionally streaming on Twitch as at BeberTheBlue. And I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.